You studied computer science and then switched to design, which is actually a very difficult transition because, as you said, you have to unlearn a lot of things. What advice would
Yeah.
you give to computer science students who wish to learn UX on their own?
I did not like go for a formal like computer science degree, right? I mean, I was learning software development, was like programming in Visual Basic and Java and JavaScript to like begin with. Those were like those days. I would say it was always this hunger for creating things, and I feel like someone who can code, and especially in the digital world, has this ability to create that, like like sculpt this thing together, right? Like as a designer, you do know the blueprint of what to be sculpted, but the process of sculpting is what the engineer does, right? So I feel like that was very important, and I feel like that perspective really helped me for the like rest of my career, where like I did understand the lingo of when an engineer says that this cannot be done or this should be done this way. I'm very open to those perspectives, but because I understand that point of view that they're bringing, right? So the advice that I would have is like, if you're getting into design, I think there has to be this like open mind that you need to keep, which is that phase of unlearning. Design is very different. Writing code or engineering is very different. They are two sides of solving this problem. And you have to understand that if you're coming to one side, you have to leave the other side for the most part of it. You can't like just keep them together. Using tools and executing with tools is a very different thing. Someone who can code can also do pixels for sure, but then what happens when you want to instill certain amount of values and principles in a product, and like think about growth path of the product, not just like this one feature, but what does this one feature do to the person who is using it, or do to the world when many people are using it, right? There's a lot of understanding that you need to kind of go through in order to create a product that is a successful product. I mean, product success is an outcome of all those things that you actually understand and go through and like analyze. So it's very important to kind of separate them out. If you are coming into design, you have to understand that understanding of the engineering side of it will help you gain the perspective of empathy towards your engineers who are building it. But as a designer, you will always be able to do the design that you want to do, right? So that is very important.
As designers, feeling energetic and being in a state of flow is really important. And it's actually in this zone that we are able to create good products. You have to be in that zone of flow to create good solutions. How do you manage your energy and different states of mind?
I think my process is a lot of times. So last like 4 or 5 years, the kind of work that I've been involved with is a lot to do with pathfinding, right? A lot of ambiguous problem spaces that I kind of delve into, which does not have an existing product or a surface. So I get an opportunity to get into those ambiguous spaces. It has its pros and cons, but I like to do that. I love to do that. And while doing that, my process has been these like three-stage process where I think about a problem in three different lenses. Every time a problem comes to me, first is like, how do you dissect the problem? Every problem has different parts, right? Like, and you got to kind of break them, cut them out into certain digestible pieces, I would say. And these digestible pieces are like you talked about the scenes in a video, right? Like they have to completely be a snippet or a scene in your head to solve them separately. And these solutions in one flow, they become the complete solution framework or the solution structure, right? So the way I look at it is like, my first step is of an explorer, right? So you kind of go and like look at a problem from an explorer's point of view, where you see these blue sky ideas that can maybe solve this problem. And also like, blue sky ideas around like just what the problem is. Why does the problem exist? Who is the problem for? Is it a problem worth solving? Or is the solution not to solve the problem, but to avoid the problem, right? So there are like so many ways you can like think about it. And then once you have some solutions or a list of things that might work to solve that problem, then I get into this phase of a scaler, right? Like I think scale has taught me a lot in terms of, and now it also connects to your question of like working in bigger companies. I think scale is something that you really learn when you work for a product that is kind of used by multiple million people or even like billion people, right? So that scale, adding that scale lens is very important, because that scale most of the times would break the most, the coolest ideas will break down when you apply scale to it. And I would say scale is a lens through which you can actually hone a set of ideas into that one thing that would, if one thing passes the scale test, I would say that is something that you can like take forward, right? And with me, that has happened multiple times. So the second part is the scale one. The third part is the lens is optimizer, the magnifying glass, right? Like, so the scale phase also helps me understand what are the antagonist situations, right? Like, what harm would this thing do in the world or to the user if it was wrong, it was used in a wrong way. So that is something that comes from scale. The third part is where mostly like every time I have a new space that I want to show people, I want to kind of share this vision or the strategy of this one thing that I'm working with the team. I want to optimize that to the finest details, even if it's in the vision process, right? Because that's what kind of brings that. I think vision really comes there when you actually show a very high fidelity thing to a set of people and narrate a story in a very, very high, fidelity. It really establishes or lands that in a way that there is no scope for any other interpretation coming in, because they're understanding what really you want to do in the world, and how this product could actually manifest in the world and be a value generator for both the user and the business, right? So these are like three parts that I usually use to keep my flow going. Doesn't matter if it is a big problem, like, how do we think about creating a complete a visual composer for so many people who would start using stories versus, a small feature that will help a creator create more stories when they are in the 24 hours phase. So this is like a small problem versus a big problem, but you can go through the same flow. Doesn't matter what the problem is.
That is really, really interesting. I think this is a very cool way of looking at things. And now that you've mentioned, I feel that first impression of your idea is really important, because your stakeholders are going to judge the entire potential by that first pitch.
You just saw a snippet from whiteboard.fm. You can watch the entire episode by clicking on the link in description. We have hundreds of clips on design case studies, hiring processes, and much more. This podcast is a part of the 10K Designers Network. Check out our website whiteboard.fm to learn more.